go live. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us here today. We have Maria Mihalceanu, who is Java champion and developer advocate at Red Hat. And together we'll have a nice discussion on a very, I would say, different topic than what we had and what you were used to up to now on this channel, because we had plenty of subjects on Java related technologies and Java in general. But we didn't discuss in any other video and any other discussion about soft skills. And soft skills, they seem to be forgotten by developers, but they still are very important, at least in our perspective. Ana Maria here, she's very experienced. She's a very experienced developer, architect, team lead, and of course, she will give us her insight, and during this discussion you will find out plenty of things and you will be able to ask questions in the live chat. I see already many of you are here with us. Thank you very much for that. I'm keeping an eye on the live chat to see. Hi Ana Maria, thank you very much for attending.
Hey, I'm so happy, and happy new year to everybody. Hope everybody started this year great, with a lot of fresh forces to work and to achieve all the goals that you have thought of for this lovely year, and may be way more better than the ones before. Thank you for having me, Laurentiu. So let's go into the topics and discuss one by one how important it is to have soft skills as a developer or as an IT professional in general, not just as a developer.
So first of all, as part of a team, how important it is to be a team player? What does that mean in your perspective? And how can you achieve that skill in case, say, you find out through feedback or some other means that you might not be a really good team player?
Well, a team player, from my point of view, means firstly that you welcome collaboration, and you feel as a team player where you firstly you understand your role. When you join a team, it's great if you know what you have to do as a member of that team, regardless if you're like a developer, if you are a QA engineer, if you're a DevOps engineer. It's very good to know what your responsibilities are. And also, well, you have to be able to hold yourself accountable. That's very, very important, and shows respect to yourself first, and then to your team members.
So you screw up something, you have to admit it, and you have to take responsibility. That's one of the
have to is like a very, very strong word, but pretty much it is showing a lot of maturity, like hiding ourselves behind I don't know, some white lies is just delaying the real solution to be achieved. Like, it's better to come clean and to focus on, fixing the problem, because this is why there's a team. You need to like address a solution together, not just one person. And of course, generally, you are a team player by having a positive attitude. I know it's difficult to have a positive attitude. We're pragmatics, right? We should be pragmatics. So what we're doing is encoding and all the time thinking all scenarios that cannot go that well, not the happy path. But on the other hand, we should have a positive attitude even in those dark moments when you're feeling the pressure of, I don't know, the product owner, or the pressure of something not working as expected in production under high load, and needing to fix that. And a lot of people are asking you on Slack or any other communication channels, like, when is going to be done? When is going to be done? They probably are not necessarily.
Stress management is one of the keys. You need to know how to manage situations in which you are mostly stressed. How about, or what about stressing others? How can we become a better team player by not stressing others, even if you are in a situation where you are stressed?
First of all, you need to trust others. Trust is very important in a team. And I know it's difficult when you are yourself under pressure to think that things are going to happen as expected. But remember all the good, when you're like questioning yourself, are the things are going to happen as I expect? Remember all the good times you shared with your colleagues when you ended up doing the goal that you wanted to achieve. So if you think of that, then you will relax and you will be able to focus and trust that you will achieve what you're trying to solve there. I know that sometimes under stressful situations, we don't behave 100% at our best. It's very difficult to be 100% all the time, to be 100% performers and to be always successful. That's another trait of a good team, like understanding when one of the team members or more of the team members have a lower situation, experience a low moment. And an advice that I have from my past experience is that when you are having this kind of situation, when you experienced a lot of stress as a team together, and of course you gain some frustration when you're doing all this, have like a small survey among yourselves. Put somebody do it, like Scrum Master, for example. Scrum Master used to do it for us, asking us like, how did you feel with clouds and sun? And the clouds, the sun, and the rain, and all these kind of weather things can show to you, can show how the team was feeling at that point. Also, it's good to ask how you're feeling afterwards, because you might have released all the steam and all the bad situation or bad feelings you had. But having those informations there, it's not for those to be used against you or something like this. Is to gain insights on how you can do it better next time as a team, in terms of how you would feel better next time when a similar situation occurs. And it can also take put some action for the business people as well to support you into like getting to a better place and so on and so forth. So most of the time is like being positive and trying to have some lessons learned from the tough situations, not just technically, because sometimes we focus on the technical aspect and like what we learned, what pattern did we implement here, what fix did we do, what library did we put there, and we tend to forget about ourselves and how our brain is feeling after such a situation. So that's something that I remember from the past, and it worked really well to know that somebody's asking you, how did you feel, and how are you feeling now?
And how can you help others? So to be a better team player, at some point you need to also know how to help them. What is the relationship between these 2 points?
Well, easy. The easiest thing that you can do as a colleague, you can ask somebody like, how can I help you? And I know that we are all busy. I acknowledge this. I am busy, yourself are busy with what we're doing. We're all the time. However, at a certain point in our career and with our experience, we're going to realize that we're always going to be busy. But you can prioritize this busyness and work it a little bit later and maybe help somebody in between, working that important task that you're having. I used to do that in the past. So I used to leave my own assignment for a little bit later and ask somebody if he or she needs help with something, so that I unblock that person. I know that that person is feeling okay with what they have to do, and I can look into my task later on.
Sometimes developers are afraid for postponing what they have in their queue, so they sometimes tend to forget that helping others is same important as solving what they have to do.
I think it's more afraid of like postponing and putting it later in the queue. Is every task that we're doing, every solution that we're making is different. We're not making routine things. We're not copy pasting things. Or even if we're copy pasting things, we still need to check them. So is this idea like, if I'm cutting my time now for this situation, will I have enough later? And this is something that you can like train yourself. And yeah, that's pretty much the reason here. You can train yourself into like postponing it like 10 minutes, allowing 10 minutes or 15 minutes to help a colleague, and then start a little bit later with what you have to do, you realize that you're going to start even way more motivated with what you're trying to do. And you'll see that it doesn't take that long, or as long as you would have imagined before, to solve what you had to do in that day. And always remember that even if you have something very, very difficult to do, you're not alone. So somebody else can jump in and help you too. That's
peer programming, and that
exactly.
it's also a bond between developers, because they suddenly have to face the same problem, and when two people have to face the same problem, then they become bonded.
Two people or more people, more programming is also a thing.
The many the merrier.
Yes, I remember that we used to do this quite often, and even nowadays we're doing it. So when somebody's having a problem, if you're shouting on a Slack channel or on a group chat or something, and you're saying, hey, this doesn't work for me, there's always going to be somebody, jumping in and saying, hey, I will jump in a call, I'll look into this if you commit this into the repo, and we will see what's about it and replicate it and so on.
There was an age before shouting on Slack when you could actually shout in your own office. Do you think this changed a lot?
I think I used to prefer the human interaction. I prefer the human interaction, but nowadays I'm not that disturbed. I think maybe I've got used to the remote situation. But given that I collaborated remotely, and you've probably collaborated remotely, and many of you have collaborated remotely with colleagues in other countries, we always make this extra effort to, pair program, even if there's a geographical barrier between us. Nowadays, I don't think we care that much. But yes, I agree, in person is way better. If you're like comparing to the amount of resources that you're spending in focusing to the screen, listening to the person and so on, you will feel that's different when you're like talking to a person face to face compared to somebody that is remote. However, we still need to achieve what we plan to do. So we're making some efforts in all the directions.
And developers who are more prone to having difficulties of being a team player, accepted in a team, which are these difficulties?
So difficulties to be accepted in a team.
To become part of the team, and maybe especially now that it's more difficult when you join a new team and we are remote, and sometimes a lot of people don't share their webcams because it happens, or at least in my case, it happens a lot. Is it more difficult, maybe at least for a junior developer? Is that also a difficulty for a senior developer?
For a junior, I think that is a little bit more difficult than for a senior one. I can speak from what I noticed last year as well. So as a junior, you need a proper walkthrough how the project is. Maybe somebody told you about how the company works, how the procedures are, but you also need a training on how the project is working. And when you were in the office, you could feel the warmth of the team and people around you, and you could have had that one-to-one with a person, which now becomes a little bit more impersonal. I admit that you need a little bit more as a senior, like training a new junior that came into your team. You need to give a little bit more time and be even more flexible with this person, because they don't know the same amount of things that a senior, and they don't have the same proactivity as a senior because they do not have the same experience. So a little bit more time invested there. However, we were junior again sometime too, and we always have to keep in mind that we used to be also juniors, and we need to be patient with those that are newer to this branch, because they're the future and they bring a lot of awesome ideas. A senior, on the other hand, I think myself being a senior that joined a new team last year in pandemic and remote, it is a little bit easier to accommodate a senior if the senior is proactive and asking questions. Never be afraid to ask questions, especially in these times with the pandemic and everything, because even though there are documentations and there's Jira's and there's Confluence and all these nice tools where you can find information on what was done in the past or how it was done in the past, it's very difficult just to get everything only from there. You also need some interaction and some discussions and some conversations on why some decisions were taken in a certain way. But
I have a question, a first question here for you, Anna Maria, or for us, I don't know. Is it recommended to keep your webcam open in every call to show openness?
That depends from person to person. I prefer to have my webcam open because I feel comfortable sharing my face and seeing others, and also I'm feeling encouraged to see to do that when I see others doing it as well, and I feel that I'm more connected to my colleagues when I'm doing that. But there are days when I don't feel that comfortable with having the webcam on, and I'm just not having it on. So it's simply a matter of choice for someone. It's not something that is like going to, I don't know, damage or improve significantly all the situation, and it's everybody should do it in a certain way. I do agree that when you see a person, like I'm seeing you now, it's way nicer to speak to a person and to see a person moving and smiling or seeing some reactions than a black screen with the name, because it feels you feel a little bit I don't know, disarmed, and you don't know. Yes, and you don't know what to do. Like, did I say the right thing? How did the person understood what I say? Yeah, and also because we're not native English speakers, we also need to pay attention how people understand what we're saying.
Read somehow the body signs as well, and maybe on the lips, see how that person looks like. In terms of my team as development, I had this question myself since some of my friends, and I've heard from other teams, forced their colleagues to have always the cam open. I decided not to do that. And the reason I decided not to force anyone sharing the webcam is because I know that some people are introverts, are not that open, and they don't feel comfortable. And what I want is my team, people from my team, to be rather comfortable than have to do something that they don't like. Still, we work together, and still we work together a third of the day. It's 8 hours a day, usual contract. So why not to make that comfortable, easy, and nice rather than make it uncomfortable? That's my perspective.
And let me ask you another thing. So when you're pair programming and somebody's sharing the screen and you're with somebody, well, one of you is coding, the other person is commenting, does any of you look at the webcam? I don't think you do, because I remember that when you're doing these pair programming sessions, and when I'm doing it and when I'm sharing code, and we're trying to fix something, we're looking at the code.
Even if you're in the same room at the same keyboard, when you're peer programming, you don't look at one another, isn't it? You're looking at the code. So
agree. So there are situations when it's nice to see a person's reaction, agree, but there are others when it might not be needed so much to see the person all the time. And I remember sometimes when we were like looking into fixing something for prod, and we spent hours like looking to some nice terminals, and I don't think any of us had like a desire of seeing something else besides not the screen anymore. after doing a lot of debugging or doing a lot of coding. So
and
it's just
someone says here, having the webcam on is difficult when you have people in the background, pets running around. Not everyone has a dedicated workspace at home, which is very true, isn't it? Now we are forced to work from home, and I do that from my mini music studio here. So I have to do that. I don't have any other choice. So I don't have pets running around, but people might have children, might have pets, and that's really the case. Yeah, and now we discussed a lot about our internal team collaborating with our colleagues, solving issues. What about opening to the world, being part of a community, networking more than inside our 5 to 10 Scrum team members? Is that important? How much relevant it is?
Well, it's important to still be present in the community to find out, for example, what are the latest trends in software development. Yes, you can read tweets, you can read LinkedIn, you can read articles, you can always Google, but it's also good to participate in certain events like meetups or some conferences, or to find out and to actually interact with others, even in this kind of remote environment. I was very much amazed by some conferences which had like spaces that try to simulate the interaction as much as possible, so people can feel comfortable of having a conversation. And I've seen that a lot of people are still wanting to do that, and you will probably at some point feel the need to do that as well, because just isolating yourself at home and going maybe to the grocery store to get some things that you need, you go outside for a walk, you go with your family, that's good, but at some point you will still feel the need to interact with other professionals. So being part in the community and still going to certain events is good for you. It's good to find out what's going on in the world. Is good to also discuss with others and see what others have done, what others are complaining about and would not want to do again with a certain technology and all these things. So
how much did it change you? Because you are delivering presentations and you are part of many conferences. In my case, I do that for maybe about 6-7 years, and I feel that this process changed me a lot in terms of soft skills. Did you feel the same? Do you feel that you were changed by this frequent attendance to events?
Yes, I feel that has changed me in the good way in terms of interacting with others and thinking and how I'm sharing the information with others. So in my, I think you're more experienced than I am with going to events, first of all.
I don't think so.
Yeah, well, you said 6-7 years ago, and I started like 5.
Yeah, anyway.
And
I'm pretty sure you were in anyway frequently to events, at least in the past.
Yeah, I was a frequent attendee of events because I like to know what's going on. I like to learn, and I've used a lot of information that I was gathering from meetups and what was shared there at work. So I was like, I found out this at that meetup. I shouldn't do that or something like this. But it has changed me to the extent like when addressing to a smaller group, for example, like doing a demo to a smaller group, and speaking from the past when I realized the good part of sharing things, I realized that I'm when I was like cabling the laptop, and I was like thinking also to the code, if everybody sees the code, if I write it nice enough for people to understand it, if I'm using the right terminology and so on. I realized that this exposure to community and talking to others in the community has helped me to shape the way that I was presenting myself even at the job. And also has helped me in interaction with groups that are not necessarily coming to our developer events. Because if you can talk to developers, to your fellow developers, to us, because as developers, we should be feeling comfortable talking to each other. So think of the developer events as a place where you can safely talk to somebody. Nobody's going to judge you, and everybody's there to help you because we are all the same. And you will feel even more empowered when you're going to talk to the business users, those that are not as technical. And you realize that your speech or the way that you're expressing something has improved, and you can like make some difference in the message that you're having for the different groups.
You're actually going just to answer a question from one of our joiners here. So let me read the question if you are going to that direction. It says communication between developers and management department are always difficult. How to make it smooth? You were going into that direction, so I wanted to read the question.
My way of doing it is always being honest and transparent with the goods and the bads. I learned down the road that I started with a very technical way of delivering information to management. And I realized from their reaction that they didn't grasp what I was saying. So in time, I had to refine the way that I was delivering that message. And I've seen improvements in the way that they were receiving the message. The idea is like all the time when you're talking to management is thinking, what I'm saying right now, what is the relevance for this person who knows, I don't know, 50% of what I'm doing daily? Because sometimes when we're talking to management, we're having the impression that they know 100% of what we're doing, but they don't, because nobody's like watching us all over the time and knows what we did and all this. So all the time assume that you need to like give a short story, or I don't know, something very short and an abstract of what you did, of what you plan to do, or why a technology is good. I know that we believe that, for example, we know the attributes of Java from technical perspective and why Java is great and awesome. But if we're going to a business person that doesn't know what Java is, and you're going with the same arguments, the reaction is not going to be the same as a developer. So you have to think like, what's the impact on that person who doesn't know all those information? It's similar like a doctor coming towards us with all the medical terms that make sense for them, but we don't have the same vocabulary. So all the time is about vocabulary that we're using with different people and adjusting that vocabulary so that we get understood.
Yeah, exactly. So I had in mind my motorbike mechanics coming to me. I changed this and that. And oh, does it work? Yes. So,
hey, we're doers. I remember that. So my third job, somebody told me like, you're always using action verbs. It was the person who was telling me this was a business user. And she was telling me like, you're always using action verbs. You should try to speak to us with verbs that are not necessarily oriented on action. We understand the actions as well, but we need something different to understand in between of those actions what's going on. Like, oh, what?
Well, what I see very frequently in members of my teams throughout time in demo meetings is that they tend to be very technical, try to explain, I don't know, they go into technicalities with users, and users in some cases, they might not know almost anything about what an app is in reality. So I remember some of my my users at some point didn't figure out the difference between the UX design and the real application. So they didn't know exactly what's the difference, and they tried to use the UX as the real application. So I think you need to really understand when you're talking to someone, what does that person really know, and then try to avoid using anything that's that they would not understand, isn't it? So
if I can say one more thing on the subject, sure. We tend to use a lot of acronyms in the world, and especially in the technical world. And last year, I was a little bit shocked in my previous role that the acronyms that for me as a technical person meant something, for a business person meant totally different thing. It happened that both sides were right. Both sides were making sense with those acronyms, but I didn't know that from business point of view, that meant something else. So always be aware that when you're using acronyms to explain that to the people that you're talking to, especially if there's a mixed audience like business and technical, because you might see that the business person is taking totally different thing from what you're saying, because you were like thinking, yeah, everybody's technical and everybody knows what this word means, or this acronym is.
Yeah, that's I did remember with your story some other thing I encountered. Like at some point, one of my developers tried to explain very technical how functionality is behind the scenes, and he was constantly repeating the word aspect, which we know what technically means, but
yes,
for the user, it meant a document, a kind of a document that they were storing and sending to the bank. So they were totally confused why we changed that. What's the relationship between their implementation and this aspect that was.
You see, so this is the thing, like all the time explain and try to explain. Sometimes business users might not end up asking you like, what's that acronym meaning? And I actually ended up in a business meeting last year, and I didn't know what an acronym meant. Everybody in the meeting was more management, and they knew what it meant. And seeing that they were using it often, I was like, what does this mean? I don't. And it's like, you don't know? Like, no, I don't. What does this mean? Please tell me. I'm sorry. Missed the memo.
A few more questions in the chat we have already, so let's take a few of them, because
sure.
they're starting to become very too many then. So communication, I will start with the first that we didn't answer. So it was one about some juniors I read there. Mm-hmm. So how you initiate a junior on a project? How many months is needed to understand the project? I think the last question is a bit tricky, because I don't think we can answer from the technical point of view. It can be many months to never. But from soft skills point of view, let's answer from soft.
It's very difficult to predict how a human will react when joining a project, and how much time it will take for a human to be onboarded. Of course,
how do you initiate it? What is your procedure? Someone new is joining the team, is a fresher, just finished the faculty, it's the first job. What's the first thing you do?
So joining a new development team, the easiest thing to do is give them firstly a brief overview of what you're doing. I mean, it's like a story of what you're doing. I know that probably that part doesn't seem very relevant. Like, why don't give a story of what you're doing? But give a story like how the project has started, what you have done so far, not using a lot of technical aspects necessarily, just using maybe some technologies that you used, and where you are and what are the plans in the future, because that is going to tell to the person that something has been done and there is future, and he or she can contribute to that future. Secondly, you can tell the person, hey, look what we're going to do. We thought for you, typically when a junior is joining, you're kind of thinking to a certain user stories that are approachable for a junior to do, and you share those user stories with the person. Explain probably what a user story is, depending on the background of the person. Maybe they don't know what that is. Agile methodology, I don't know if nowadays it's taught everywhere in university. So it's better to assume that maybe it was not, and let's discuss this. Discuss how the team is analyzing, so how a developer analyzes a user story, how the task breakdown is going on, how the work is done. By the way, also explaining how the team is working, what happens if you are stuck, how can somebody help you, and all these things. If you're using test-driven development and you're using pair programming, you can say, hey, we're doing this team test-driven development. This means this, and that. To learn how to do that, you will probably need a buddy, because doing test-driven development on your own as a junior, I kudos to who can do it, but I don't see it feasible.
Feasible. Sometimes can't solve even a very small, simple task, but that's not their fault. And I will interrupt you a bit just to read the second question that's very related, to answer both of them. What do you think? How much time a newcomer in a company should be given before expecting from him, her to put solutions on existing projects, which is related to what you were saying?
Again, this depends from individual to individual and from projects to project. I've worked on some very well documented projects. So that's a blessing. That's a blessing. And also projects that have and teams that have worked towards having a good collaboration and, being all the time transparent and working on ourselves to collaborate even better. So when you are joining in such an environment as a junior, it takes less time for you to adjust to this place. I cannot give like a definite number of weeks, because again, it depends on the person and how they are accommodated there.
Well, I don't think you either need to give them. It's just a continuous progress, isn't it?
Yes, it's a continuous progress, but you will see from how the person reacts that it takes them, you'll see that if they understand their role in the team, if they understand what they have to do on the user stories, they will become proactive and they will be involved into delivering what it was asked from them. So even if they're juniors, you're going to see that struggle for proving that they can do it. This is also from my own experience as a junior. When I joined, I wanted to prove that I can do it, that I don't need for somebody to all the time look over what I'm doing. It was good also to have somebody reviewing my code. But I also wanted to prove that, look, I can grow and I can be better. And this is what gives the definition of junior joining and accommodating in a team. Like somebody that feels passionate or impulsionated to do even better, or to prove that to prove themselves. Whenever you're joining a team, regardless of your seniority, you want to prove that that you're a good developer. It's something in our DNA. It's the good ego of the developer, I would say. When we want to contribute with what we have our best to that team, to show that, yeah, you did right when you choose me. It was good that you choose me. Let me show you how I can contribute with awesome code to this project. So it depends on how well you have structured your own ways of working. A team that has good ways of working will not have problems onboarding a junior, and it will take less time than, let's say, you didn't document properly some architectural decisions. You don't have a log of things that have changed, not referring to code here, referring to what you have decided regarding your architecture. You don't have a proper, documentation on how to locally set up your things on your computer for the specific project. And other security stuff has to be conducted. And all these things, if you don't have them like standardized as a team, it will take longer for somebody to be together there with you and performing and delivering something.
At the same time, the developer ego, and I'm going now a bit further into our discussion because I also have a question that drives me there, and I will read the question. I've seen backend teams and frontend not working in sync, just focusing on their part. Is that the right thing? Because I think backend team should think how it's going to work with the front end. And this not working in sync, let's combine this with the subject on resolving conflicts, because it's somehow related. The developer ego, what you were saying, can become conflict spring at some point. And what about solving problems between team members and between even entire teams? Like you have a front-end team, a back-end team, how do you make them work together?
Yes. Well, when you're starting, well, when you're getting a project as a team or big teams, many teams get a project, get a big platform to do, for example. The first thing that you do, you don't go and code. Typically, you would have a bunch of folks. I would call them architects, thinking on not just the diagrams and how technologies to choose and how good things are going to be happening over there, but they're also thinking like how people are going to collaborate into implementing that nice diagrams with those technologies. I was in the shoes of that person who had to think like how flows are going to be in between, let's say, front end and back end. It was actually flows between different components of the system and how not to make others wait. This was one of my biggest questions all the time when I was thinking in implementation, and I was thinking like how something will be done at a higher level, how somebody will not wait for me to do something, regardless if I'm back end, regardless if I'm front end, and how I can collaborate with others so that they don't expect my implementation and they end up frustrated that I'm not giving them something. And I think nowadays we have a lot of options, especially when we're talking about front end and back end. If you're like using REST, there's always a way to give a piece of JSON response and how things are going to look like coming from your API. You can define how your API endpoints are going to look like, or at least give a high level. People can, code with that skeleton and have a common skeleton. So having a common skeleton that you both know can help you to do some work. If in the end, there are some minor tweaks, I don't know, instead of a word, you change it to another one, that's just a minor change. The idea is like to have the handshake between the teams well organized and well set. And this kind of process you typically establish in the beginning, this flow. Because if you're going to go into development, you're going to be stuck at some point with waiting.
What if, and this happens to me quite often, you have team members who don't agree one with another, or maybe even as in the question here, whole teams not agree one with another. What I discovered is that you can't have 100% democracy in the team. You have to be a bit of authority there from the, call it architect, team lead, whatever.
Yeah, it's called architectural decision. So when there's a technical dispute, typically there's an architectural decision there. And the architectural decision is pretty much well known how to be done in very simple terms. Architectural decision means pros and cons, of course, with technical arguments, not because I like it or because I've seen somebody doing it and it would be so cool. But architectural decision documents it, and then you look to that as a team. And I think that you can see when you're like seeing things with pros and cons, I think you can see where the balance is going there. You can vote. That's another thing.
There's sometimes that developer with a high ego who doesn't agree with you. What do you do?
Oh, well, let me see. It depends on how important is the thing that their ego is set on. If I would see that would be damaging in the future for the system, probably I would try to talk down the person from and to convince the person to agree with the view that I or the majority of the team has regarding that. It's sometimes I think it would make you feel a little awkward if you are the only one who believes a certain thing and the rest of the team doesn't. It tells something about you and the team as well. But always remember that even if you're like with the book of the righteous code in your hand and you're saying, yes, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, it's good to let go.
If you see yourself, you are the only one with that opinion.
Okay.
Maybe it's something wrong with you. So.
Okay, and let's assume that you are the only one right? And the team makes a mistake. Okay, it's going to be the mistake of the team. Maybe you can tell them later I was right. I don't know how satisfying is that.
I told you, it's that kind of
you can tell
advice of telling I told you.
I mean, I was the kind of person who I was in the person's shoes that said a few things that will go bad if we're going on that road. Still, some folks chose the road that was going to the bad situation. At the end, when things hit the wall and it was not that nice, we had a meeting to discuss the failure and so on. We discussed it, and everybody knew that there was another option. You don't need to be somebody to tell you, yeah, you were right all the time or something. The time will prove.
You always do mistakes. Sometimes you do mistakes,
and you learn from them.
That's
and
it.
And you learn from them. And you learn from them. It's very dangerous, by the way, to have a person in the team that's always right. I try to avoid that because I made mistakes as well, and it's very difficult. When people believe that you're always right, when you're going to do a mistake, it's going to be
that's not good either, indeed. So if everyone every time thinks you're always right, then that's something wrong in there, because you can't be always right. I will focus a bit on the chat again, because it went crazy already. So we have a lot of statements and questions. I read a very interesting one here. It's a statement, not a question, but let's debate on this. I think even if a programmer does not know a topic or technology, still should be assigned to a task on that topic or technology, probably, that forces them to learn the new stack. What do you think about that? Would you force a member of your team to work on a specific technology they don't like just to help them learn?
Forcing. Well, if you assign a task to a person that doesn't like something, that person will end up doing the task, but it will take longer time for the task to be completed. So don't start when you're forcing things. The downside is that it will take longer to be done. So be aware of that. Also, the quality of the implementation, it depends on how much time the person has at hand to learn that specific programming language. Enforcing a specific programming language because you have to in these 2 days, it triggers a survival mechanism in a developer, but the survival mechanism, like the regular survival mechanism in humans, can get you to either a very good outcome or to an outcome that is going to hit you later in the implementation. So be careful on doing that. I wouldn't necessarily force somebody to do that. For example, myself and front-end skills are not friends too much. I can do it, but it's not the area where I feel more comfortable, and it takes
I relate that. I have nothing to do with front-end, so ask me that.
So you know how it feels. I will, if it needs to be done by me, I will do it. But it might take longer. It might not be as great as somebody who lives that, who breathes that. Yes, I will probably warn you on that. I did front end in the past. It seemed to be good, apparently, but it took me longer. And I remember that I was warning the Scrum Master that, yes, I'm going to do this, but it will take me longer because I'm not very familiar with this. I was doing it, but I was warning that it will take longer to do something like that.
I also avoid as much as possible forcing someone to do something they don't like, unless it's critical and I don't have someone else to do that. I really say, please help me with that. Otherwise, if they want to learn that thing, then I'm okay with that. I allow one of my, say, front-end developers work on a backend if they want that. If they don't want that, I never force them. And again, if I really need, because I'm in a crisis, half of the team got COVID-19 and I'm in a crisis, I need someone to solve that task. I'm just very polite when I ask that, especially if I know that person don't want to do the task.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for mid-level developers for improving their career? Mid-level developers.
mid-level
They are not junior, they are not senior, they are somewhere at the middle and they need to become seniors. What should they do?
It's the best part of the career when you can, when you know, when you have some knowledge and when you decide what you want to become when you grow up. So speaking from my own experience as a mid-level developer, learn as much as possible. I mean, learn what you want, what you like. That's what I did. I learned what I liked when I was at the medium level. I think it's medium level. I learned what I liked. I read what I liked. I just pretty much studied a lot on things that I was thinking that I was not mastering. So whatever you feel that you don't master in your field as a developer, and that you think that makes you not 100% safe or sure on your skills, do that, learn that. When I was a medium developer, I was very much preoccupied about how am I going to grow, because I was dreaming of being a senior. For me, being a senior meant to have all the answers in the world. When I got to be called senior, I realized I still don't have all the answers in the world. So, but that was my dream. When you're a junior and going to medium, you still have some dreams. Then you dream to be, I don't know, technically. I was not that much, but I was thinking like architect. I like to draw. As an architect, I would like to draw lots, and that seemed cool for me, and it's still cool. I was thinking like, okay, what I can do to become a better architect. So if I need to like have a vision of what to design, I have to know how to implement these things. So I read more about implementations, about patterns, about frameworks. I was very curious about how frameworks are working, not necessarily only the popular one. I know you teach Spring and you love Spring. I love Spring as well. But I was preoccupied also by the...
I love Java in general, so I don't want to necessarily relate to one framework because the whole Java ecosystem is part of my my heart.
That's the best. Try to learn the others as well. I know that nowadays because of the popularity of certain architecture types, well, you choose certain frameworks. But give it a try to the other frameworks as well, out of fun, for example. I remember that I read in an OSGI book about modular architecture.
All Java ecosystem without OSGI, I forgot to tell you. So, joking,
oh,
no, I was joking.
What is? I've seen this around with people not liking OSGI. I'm sorry. I was, when I read that book, I was thinking like, I would never use this thing. I will not say that. Yeah, I use it. So later, after I read the book, like 2 years after, and I was thinking like, what? Anyway, but every experience is to be cherished. Because every experience can teach you when to use a certain architecture pattern and where to use certain design and certain implementation. Because you will hear, if you end up at the architect level, you'll hear business users asking you things that will seem impossible with, let's say, microservices. Because they will say like, do it fast. I want it to, be something that I can change often and all these other things. They're going to put some, let's say, restrictions or requirements around how the system should behave. And you need to supply that as an architect or as a team, you have to implement that. And you realize that only with a single pattern is not going to be enough. So you need to know more. And sometimes you need to know more frameworks. You need to know more things from the ecosystem of programming to do those parts as the business requires them. Or know more technologies or more services, because nowadays software as a service is also important and can abstract for you some work. Like, let's not reinvent the wheel when it was already done by another company. So
if it doesn't cost a lot, of course, because usually software as a service and cloud costs, but that's not a discussion.
About that, always balance a build cost versus buying cost. If you need to think that building something is also a cost. So, okay, this is for higher people with the numbers, not us, which are technical.
Yeah, yes.
They're doing the numbers.
Fortunately, I hate that.
We just know how much. We only know how much time it takes. That's how I used to say it. Like, I can tell you how much time it takes for this to be done.
Because estimations usually are not precise. Yes. One question that was not even on my kind of subjects for today, but is soft skills indeed, and it's related to negotiation. So someone says, where was the question? Sorry, how does a developer evaluate that they are ready for the next level, and how they convince their managers on it? So how do you convince your boss that you need a raise, or you are more than what you are now? How do you persuade someone?
That's something that probably everybody answered that already on Google. It typically is all the answers in the world are on Google, right? But seriously speaking now, you can convince your manager when you're visible to your manager with your work. So all the time, try to make visible to your manager what you're working on. You did an awesome API using some great patterns. Tell this to your boss. If you didn't tell him, I don't know, email him. Sometimes when you're working, because we worked in consultancy, sometimes customers give feedback. They kind of give an email. It was awesome that you did this for me. You saved me when you did this. You, meaning the team. You are part of the team. That's an evidence that you did something awesome. So that is something that can be used when you're talking to your manager, that I think I've grown. That if I was thinking that you're going to ask like negotiation from technical point of view, you negotiate that.
But I was going after this to the question, because I wanted to say, from my point of view, more difficult than negotiating your salary or proving your boss that you are better than what you are now, is negotiating with your client, negotiating with your user. I think that's where more persuasion skills are needed, or at least that's my feeling. But before going into that, an advice from my point of view to not to the employees willing to prove that they are more, but to their leaders, would be that always you are accountable for a team. Do have a look and evaluate constantly the members of your team. And if you see that you have members of the team who are not on the right way, or don't have the needed path, advise them, because your duty is to advise them. You are not a leader if you don't help others grow.
Agree. And speaking about, the path, not all of us know the path that we're going to go from day one when we join a company, or from day one when we start programming. I remember that when I started programming, my goal was like to write good code. That was the first thing that I wanted as a junior. When I evolved, my goal was different. I wanted to know more how the overall system works and so on. But there are people that will not know exactly what's their path, what technologies to add to their portfolio. So always add to your portfolio technologies that you read that can relate to a certain point with what you're doing. Frameworks that relate to what you're doing. Documenting yourself all the time, what's going on in the field, in the world, is keeping you up to date, not just job-wise, but this is how you grow and you know where the world is focusing or like shifting towards. And you don't end up surprised in like 2-3 years from now, or 2-3 months from now, that, I don't know, certain features are now mandatory to be done with a certain technology, which you didn't bother yourself because you thought that your technology that you were using was awesome all the time. So always try to evaluate the other technologies that are in the market for achieving something, and add those to your portfolio to grow yourself. Speaking about growing, you will find yourself at some points that you are kind of doubting the path that you are. I mean, I doubted myself at the end of 2019, and I remember that, and my former manager can say that too, that I doubted that I am like tailored to be an architect, even though I was doing the role. I just realized that because I didn't understand, I didn't understand that there was a difference between the idealistic world that was in my head that an architect was doing and something that was building it, and what was happening to me. I mean, I was missing the ability at that point. I was not understanding that I should translate all those informations that was coming sometimes in business documents, that I have to translate them into something measurable as an architect, and was thinking, how am I going to do this? And I was having like a mental blockage. And again, my former manager has helped me in that direction and has unblocked me and explained to me, and also told me, like, think very well if you like to go in this path, but you should be aware that this and this and that, and re-explained to me what an architect means and how I should look to those documents. And that's how I so now I know how to do it. But it can happen to everybody, and it can happen in any path that we're choosing, and we feel that we're not enough, or we're doubting ourselves that what we're doing is right. Because at that time I was having a moment like, I'm going to code all the time, I'm not going to do anything like this because I don't know how to do this. And now I'm more like, and then I just learned the mathematics behind it, and it was like, oh, this is so nice and cool, and I love it. But it takes somebody a leader, a manager in this case, to explain you and motivate you to go forward.
Cool. So we have so many more subjects on our plate for today, but no more time left, guys. And I was really surprised. Thank you for such a high interaction on the chat. So you were so many, and your messages and your questions were so many that I couldn't keep track with them. And I'm sorry for those of you for which I didn't read your comment or question, because there were too many. But I guess that leaves room for a next session whenever that will come. So Ana Maria, thank you very much. I think it's time to close this session, because yeah, time doesn't allow us for more. And again, thank you very much, guys, for your attention.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Laura, for inviting me, and have a beautiful weekend and a great year ahead of you. And yeah, don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter for what we're doing technically and soft skills related. And yeah, have a great one, everybody.
Waving goodbye.